Imagine this. You are in a room full of people. Everyone is talking at the same time, but no one is saying anything truly profound. Empty laughter, recycled opinions, and phrases copied from a random meme or headline. Amid all that noise, have you ever wondered why it seems we think less, feel less, and understand less? We live in the era of infinite information. You can access all the wisdom accumulated over centuries of humanity in seconds. Yet, the paradox is brutal. We are becoming more superficial, more distracted, and in many cases, more manipulable. How is it possible that in a world with so much knowledge, we are surrounded by so much ignorance? Perhaps you have already noticed it. Increasingly empty conversations, debates reduced to shouting and labels, and young people who know more about an influencer's life than their own history. The noise grows, but meaning fades. First of all, many accept it as normal. But here is the uncomfortable question. Why is society becoming increasingly stupid? Who benefits from this decline in wisdom? Most importantly, what can you and I do to avoid being dragged down by this wave of creative mediocrity? Stay until the end of this video because I'm going to reveal not only the root causes of this phenomenon, but also the keys to resisting it. I must warn you, what you discover might make you uncomfortable. It will force you to confront how you consume information, how you think, and how you live every day. Society seems to be sinking into a tide of superficiality, but there is still a path forward for those who dare to think for themselves. It is a difficult, uncomfortable, and lonely path, but it is also the only one that can restore the clarity we have lost. So join me, because what you are about to hear could forever change how you understand culture, politics, education, technology, and, above all, your own mind. Never before in human history have we had so much knowledge at our fingertips. We literally carry a library larger than the one in Alexandria in our pockets. A network of knowledge connecting philosophers, scientists, and thinkers from every era. Why then do we feel like we know less and less? The paradox is evident. We are surrounded by information, yet we lack wisdom. We consume tons of data, but find it harder to make sense of it. It is like drinking seawater. The more we drink, the thirstier we become. Think about it for a moment. How many times a day do you check your phone just for a second, only to end up trapped for hours in an endless chain of videos, headlines, and posts that you cannot even remember the next day? How many times do you read a news story based solely on the headline, without stopping to verify its content or reflect on its context? This is not an accident. It is by design. The platforms we consume are built to keep us hooked, not to make us wiser. Their logic is centered on attention, not truth. Fallen eunuchs. In that system, whatever is simplest, fastest, and most emotional wins. The complex is sidelined, the nuanced is lost, and the profound dies. In fact, studies show that our average attention span is lower than it was just a decade ago. This is not because we are less intelligent, but because we are bombarded by stimuli that train our brains to crave immediacy. We jump from one 15-second video to another, from a meme to a tweet, without ever stopping to reflect. Deep thought becomes a luxury few are willing to afford. The irony is that the more superficial knowledge we acquire, the less capable we become of deep understanding. And knowing thousands of facts does not equate to understanding reality. The memory may be full, but the consciousness remains empty. These shifts carry severe consequences. Society that cannot distinguish between the true and the false, or between the important and the irrelevant, becomes vulnerable, easily manipulated, and fragile. Do you realize what this means? We are not experiencing a crisis of information, but a crisis of interpretation. We do not lack knowledge. We lack the ability to transform it into wisdom. If we fail to reverse this trend, an abundance of information will remain our greatest poverty. Why does society choose the superficial over the profound? The answer lies not only outside us, in networks or the media, but within the way our own minds function. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman, a Nobel laureate in economics, explained that we operate with two systems of thought. System 1 is fast and intuitive, allowing us to react immediately, make instant decisions, and survive. System 2 is slow and reflective, requiring effort, energy, and patience. Guess which one we prefer to use most of the time? Exactly. System 1. Our brains are wired to conserve energy, which is why we prefer quick answers, simple explanations, and immediate certainty. The problem is that the world we live in has learned to exploit this weakness. Social media, advertising, and politics are all designed to appeal to our System 1 thinking, the automatic, emotional, and impulsive mind. As a result, we exercise critical thinking less and less, rarely engaging in deep reasoning. Think about it. What is easier? Reading a philosophy essay that challenges your beliefs, or watching a short video that hands you a packaged opinion in 20 seconds? What is more comfortable? Stopping to analyze complex data, or accepting the first simple explanation that makes you feel good? Most people choose the latter. And so, step by step, an entire society grows accustomed to thinking less. This is not a coincidence. It is a business model. The content that succeeds is not the truest, but the most viral. What spreads fastest is emotion, not reflection. Emotional content thrives on simplicity, indignation, laughter, or fear. These are mental shortcuts that our brains love, but they leave us highly manipulable. In fact, studies from MIT show that fake news spreads faster than the truth, precisely because it is designed to target our emotions. An exciting lie travels further than a boring truth. In that dynamic, the profound always loses to the superficial. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche warned of the arrival of the last man, a human being who flees from effort, seeks only comfort, and avoids anything that requires thought or suffering. That concept feels closer than ever, because what was once a latent danger has become a lifestyle. Intellectual comfort has normalized. We are no longer surprised when people argue on the internet about topics they do not understand, displaying a confidence that holds no weight. It no longer shocks us to see an absurd idea become a trend, while valuable reflections pass unnoticed. Superficiality has become the standard. Here is the key point. Stupidity does not stem solely from ignorance, but from the voluntary abandonment of thought. It is more comfortable not to question. It is easier to repeat what others say. It is faster to become outraged than to analyze, and society pays the price. Yet, there is an even more unsettling reality. This decline is not an accident, it is a strategy. The more we think automatically, the easier we are to direct. A population that reacts with quick emotions is far easier to manipulate than one that reflects slowly. The psychological problem shifts into a political, cultural, and social one. The question then becomes inevitable. What would happen if we decided to resist this trend? What if we started using system 2 more, the slow thought process, even if it hurts, even if it is uncomfortable? Perhaps then we would discover that our minds are capable of much more than we believe. Choosing the difficult path is never popular, and this is where the trap reveals itself. What strengthens a society is rarely what is most consumed. To understand collective stupidity, we must first accept this truth. The root lies in how we think, in our psychological weaknesses, and in how the world has learned to exploit them to the maximum. What we are experiencing today did not catch the great thinkers of the past by surprise. Many of them had already warned of the dangers facing a society that chooses comfort over truth and the superficial over the profound. In his theory of the last man, Nietzsche was not just describing a mediocre human type, but an inevitable consequence of a society that renounces greatness. This being, satisfied with the bare minimum, represents the triumph of conformism. He no longer dreams, takes risks, or seeks transcendence. He prefers security over risk and comfort over struggle. With this, humanity itself diminishes, reduced to a herd that no longer knows how to create or aspire anything higher. Plato also left us a warning more than 2,000 years ago. In his allegory of the cave, he described men chained inside, watching shadows on the wall and believing those shadows were reality. Today, those shadows do not come from a fire but from screens. We live surrounded by projections, fragments, and digital illusions that we mistake for truth. What happens when someone attempts to break free and look at the light? Just like in the cave, many reject and attack them because the truth hurts more than a comfortable illusion. Neil Postman, in his work Amusing Ourselves to Death, anticipated that the greatest danger to democracy would not be direct censorship, but the trivialization of thought. It would not be a tyrant banning books, but an entire culture that stops reading because it prefers to be entertained. Today, we do not need a dictator to strip away our freedom. We willingly hand it over in exchange for constant amusement. Carl Jung explained that true human maturity requires confronting the shadow, contradictions, and the uncomfortable. Our current culture, however, is obsessed with the simple, fast answers and avoiding any form of pain. We reject complexity as if it were an enemy, where in reality it is the only path to wisdom. If we look at history, we find that this pattern repeats time and again. Entire civilizations have fallen not just from external invasions, but due to their own internal decay. The Roman Empire, for example, was weakened not only by the barbarians at its borders, but by a society that grew numb through luxury, spectacle, and easy bread. The famous panem et circenses, bread and circuses, was not just entertainment, it was a tool of control. A distracted mass does not rebel, think, or create. What do we have today? A digital version of that same bread and circus. Memes, series, short videos, and meaningless controversies keep us busy while what matters crumbles around us. No one needs to chain us because we have chosen the most comfortable chains ourselves, those of inexhaustible entertainment. Philosophy then becomes a mirror. Becomes a mirror. It shows us that what we are experiencing is not new. It is the same eternal struggle between depth and superficiality, effort and comfort, truth and illusion. The difference is that this struggle now occurs on a global scale, amplified by technology and accelerated by immediacy. Here arises an essential question. Do we want to be the guardians of wisdom or the prisoners of shadows? Philosophy does not provide easy answers, but it reminds us that the destiny of a society always depends on the quality of its thought. If we let critical thinking die, we let our freedom die as well. To understand why society is becoming increasingly stupid, it is not enough to look at individual psychology or philosophical warnings. We must observe how culture, education, and power have shaped this reality. Let us start with education. For centuries, education was conceived as the art of forming the mind, teaching how to think, and cultivating curiosity. Today, in many places, it is reduced to memorizing data to pass exams. Schools and universities, trapped in the logic of productivity, prepare students to perform on standardized tests rather than understand the world. The result is entire generations trained to repeat answers, but unable to formulate questions. Philosopher John Dewey warned a century ago that education is not preparation for life. Education is life itself. Yet, what we have today is a system that kills creativity and critical thinking in the name of efficiency. Added to this is the culture of immediacy. Instead of sages, we now have influencers. Instead of teachers, we celebrate celebrities. Knowledge is no longer measured by the depth of ideas, but by the number of followers or likes. In this world, the popular is confused with the true, and the profound is sidelined because thinking slowly does not generate clicks. The tone here should turn sharp and critical regarding power dynamics. There is an even more unsettling level: power. This trend towards superficiality is convenient not only for digital platforms, but also for those who seek to govern without being questioned. A distracted, divided, and misinformed population is far easier to control. Fulfulness and the Roman poet Juvenal summarized this as panem et circenses, feremblens, rulers kept the population quiet by providing food and entertainment, while corruption and decay advanced without resistance. Today, we live in the modern version: unlimited consumption, endless spectacles, and manufactured controversies that distract us from real problems. Michel Foucault explained that modern power does not need to impose itself through explicit violence. And it functions by shaping what we think, what we desire, and what we consider normal. One of its most effective methods is controlling our attention. Every notification, trending topic, and wave of outrage is a way to capture our minds, ensuring we do not focus on the essential. In this sense, collective stupidity is not just a cultural accident, it is a political and economic strategy. The less people think, the more docile they become. The more they are entertained by the trivial, the less energy they have to challenge injustice. The more the system divides society into opposing sides, the less capacity exists for united resistance. Culture, education, and power work together to create a numbed society. Many do not perceive it because they mistake constant distraction for freedom when it is actually a highly sophisticated form of slavery. We have examined the causes: human psychology, a superficial culture, a weakened educational system, and the power structures that benefit from it all. But what are the consequences of this collective stupidity? The first consequence is political. A society unable to think critically is fertile ground for manipulation. Discourse is simplified into empty slogans, phrases that stir emotion but explain nothing. Instead of debates, we have spectacles. Instead of reflection, we have tribalism. Politics reduces to shouting louder than the other side, dividing people into factions that no longer dialogue but simply insult one another. When reason disappears, democracy weakens. The second consequence is cultural. Superficiality normalizes. Influencers who base their success on scandal or exaggeration become role models for millions. Fame is confused with wisdom and exposure with value. Depth loses its appeal because it requires effort, while banality goes viral because it entertains. The third consequence is social. A community that does not know how to think together loses its ability to build a future. When individuals live trapped in their own bubbles of distraction, the sense of the collective erodes. Society fragments into isolated individuals obsessed with personal validation, yet unable to compare on common projects. Finally, the fourth consequence is personal. Collective stupidity weakens your individual life. When you accept the noise without questioning it, you renounce your inner freedom. You stop owning your mind and become a product of algorithms, propaganda, and what others decide you should think. This is the silent cost. We do not just lose quality in our institutions or culture, we lose quality in our very existence. A life without reflection, depth, or wisdom is a life that slides into mediocrity without even noticing. Many accept this as inevitable, but it is not. Decline is not a fixed destiny. It is a choice we make every day as individuals and as a society. Are we condemned to sink into this spiral of collective stupidity, or is there a way to resist? The answer is clear. Yes, there is a path back. It is not easy, fast, or popular. It demands courage, discipline, and above all, awareness. The first step is to reclaim your attention. Our mind is our most valuable resource, yet we hand it over to screens as if it were worth nothing. Every time you consciously choose what to consume instead of letting an algorithm dictate your choices, you perform an act of resistance. Freedom begins with where you direct your gaze. The second step is to cultivate slow reflection. In a world that prizes speed, thinking slowly becomes a revolutionary act. Read an entire book instead of a summary. Have a deep conversation instead of a quick exchange of phrases. Stop to write down your ideas instead of just reacting. These habits rebuild the muscle of critical thinking that has metadata atrophiated today. The third step is to embrace complexity. Not everything can be reduced to a yes or a no, one side or another, or a short phrase. Life is ambiguous, contradictory, and difficult. Right there in that uncomfortable terrain, true wisdom is born. The fourth step is to create a conscious community. No one becomes wise in absolute isolation. Since the time of Socrates, philosophy has always been a dialogue. Surround yourself with people who challenge you to think, not just those who confirm what you already believe. Practice the art of authentic conversation, listening without prejudice, asking without fear, and sharing without masks. Awakened society can only be born from awakening individuals in dialogue with one another. The fifth step is to recover memory. We cannot allow the past to dissolve in an avalanche of irrelevant novelties. History is not an ornament, it is a stern teacher. Those who forget yesterday's mistakes are condemned to repeat them tomorrow. Rediscovering classic thinkers, philosophers, and great writers is not nostalgia, it is resistance. Finally, the sixth step is to reclaim silence. We are surrounded by noise, But we rarely listen to what is essential, our own inner voice. Silence is not empty. It is the space where the mind breathes, the soul finds order, and deep ideas emerge. Kierkegaard warned that constant bustle distances us from ourselves. Practicing silence is a way to reclaim ownership of our being. Each of these steps may seem small, almost insignificant, but history shows that great changes always begin with conscious minorities who refuse to live numbed lives. You do not need the whole of society to wake up at once. It is enough for a few people to choose to think differently to spark change. Wisdom is not a privilege reserved for a few geniuses. It is an option available to anyone who decides to resist the inertia of mediocrity. In a world that rewards the superficial, thinking deeply is not just a personal choice. It is a political act, an act of freedom. We have traveled an uncomfortable but necessary path. We have seen how society seems to sink deeper into superficiality each day, how the manipulation of attention and constant noise weaken our ability to think, and how this decay benefits those who prefer a distracted, docile population over a critical, conscious one. But here is the most important truth of all. The real danger is not that society is becoming stupider. The real danger is that you accept it as inevitable. The moment you bow your head and convince yourself that nothing can be done, you stop being part of the resistance and become part of the problem. Collective stupidity feeds on individual silence. I want to leave you with a clear idea. You have more power than you think. You may not be able to change the entire world in one blow, but you can change your world, your mind, and your surroundings. When one person does, it inspires others to follow. That is how silent revolutions begin. The ones that do not appear on front pages, but transform history from the ground up. True wisdom has never been a majority stance. Socrates was condemned for making his city uncomfortable. Galileo was silenced for challenging dogma. Martin Luther King Jr. was persecuted for dreaming of a different world. In every era, those who dared to think differently were seen as crazy, dangerous, or inconvenient. Yet, they were the ones who lit the torch that later illuminated millions. Today, you have to decide. Will you follow the flow of distraction, ease, and comfort? Or will you dare to be different, to cultivate your mind, and to think deeply in a world that has almost forgotten what it means to think? Ask yourself, are you feeding your mind or are you numbing it? Are you using your time to grow or to dissipate into the irrelevant? Are you the master of your attention or are you handing it over for free to those who profit from your passivity? The choice is yours. Though it may seem small, remember this. Every time you choose reflection over distraction, silence over noise, and truth over comfort, you strengthen collective intelligence. Do not wait for society to change before you do. Transformation begins with you, here and now. If this message resonated with you, do not let it die in oblivion. Share it, discuss it, reflect on it, and above all, integrate it into your daily life. The next time you feel the temptation to lose yourself in banality, remember that in that very instant, you are deciding what kind of world you want to live in. The world needs less noise and more clarity, fewer followers and more thinkers, less empty entertainment, and a deeper search for truth. By staying until the end, you have shown that you are not like the rest. You have the discipline to listen, to reflect, and to look past the superficial. That is your greatest asset. Do not waste it. Before we finish, I invite you to do something simple but powerful. Subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to wake up. This is not just about growing a community. It is about expanding a message that can ignite minds and transform lives. Remember always, collective stupidity only triumphs when individual wisdom surrenders. As long as there is even one person who dares to think clearly, the future can still be written with intelligence. Choose wisely, because in the end, your mind is your greatest act of freedom. Okay, and that's it for this video. If you like it, please thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, activate the bell to get notifications on my new videos. Also, send me your comments, or if you have any question or any topic you want me to talk about in my channel. See you guys next time. Bye bye.